Hello everybody in Busan and all the people from other countries who are watching now in this webinar, this conference at the same time. I would have loved to be there with you live in wonderful Busan, but unfortunately because of the COVID-19 crisis that I can't travel. But I have a little bit of Korea with me. So here in my home in the Amsterdam metropolitan area in the Netherlands, we have this wonderful antique Korean chest and we love it. Now, I was asked to tell you something about the post-COVID world and what cities like Busan could do with that. The Corona crisis, what it is doing, the COVID crisis, what it is doing. Before I move into what's happening, let's now move to the year 2050, when this is a video that is on YouTube that was made by an Australian artist. And there you can see a father telling his son a bedtime story about the plague of 2020 and how that changed the world. It's called The Great Realization. Let's have a look at it.
It was a world of waste and wonder, of poverty and plenty, back before we understood why hindsight's 2020. You see, the people came up with companies to trade across all lands. But they swelled and got much bigger than we ever could have planned. We'd always had our wants, but now it got so quick. You could have anything you dreamed of in a day, and with a click. We noticed families had stopped talking. That's not to say they never spoke, but the meaning must have melted, and the work-life balance broke. And every day the skies grew thicker, till you couldn't see the stars. So we flew in planes to find them, while down below we filled our cars. We filled the sea with plastic, because our waste was never capped, until each day when you went fishing you'd pull them out, already wrapped. But then in 2020, a new virus came our way. The governments reacted and told us all to hide away. But while we all were hidden, amidst the fear, and all the while, the people dusted off their instincts. They remembered how to smile. They started clapping to say thank you, and calling up their mums, and while the car keys gathered dust they would look forward to their runs. And with the skies less full of voyagers the earth began to breathe, and the beaches bore new wildlife that scuttled off into the seas. Some people started dancing, some were singing, some were baking. We'd grown so used to bad news, but some good news was in the making. And so when we found the cure, and were allowed to go outside, we all preferred the world we found to the one we'd left behind. Old habits became extinct, and they made way for the new, and every simple act of kindness was now given its due.
But why did it take a virus to bring the people back together?
Well, sometimes you've got to get sick, my boy, before you start feeling better.
What are we going to see in the post-COVID world? The first thing we're going to see is that globalization will slow down. Some people talk about deglobalization, so that it would be all rolled back. I don't believe in that. I think we are still going to see globalization, but in a slower pace. So I prefer to call it slowbalization. The next thing we're going to see is that the long global supply chains all over the world, that they will not all be kept intact as they are. Some will be kept as they are, but a lot of them will be replaced by shorter regional supply chains, and that is fine. What we're also going to see, even if we find a vaccine, even if we find a cure for this plague, there are other viruses which are trying to hunt us. So we will have to learn to live with viruses more than we did before. We will have also to learn to live from one lockdown into the next, and in between we are free. And that these periods of freedom can be a few months or a few years or 20 or 30 years, and then a new virus comes up, new lockdown comes up. So we're going to have to learn to adapt and to learn to live from lockdown to lockdown. Due to this, some factories will return to come near to manufacture near the consumers. That trend is called reshoring. And we're also going to see that the digital transformation is going to happen much faster now than it did before. And thanks to 5G and then later 6G internet, we can work from everywhere in the portable workplace. So the digital workplace is going to emerge very, very fast. And that means that not everybody has to live in a city anymore, because most of the jobs are in the city. You can do your work in Busan from a rural village in South Korea. You can do your work in other big cities, also from small towns. That is one of the things that is called urbanization. So the return from urbanization. And that is an interesting trend to see, because what we're going to see that this is going to lead to a major shift in real estate development. What we are so working from home becomes the new normal. So what we also see is that governments, big governments, are here to stay. All over the world, governments become powerful. They invest, they spend money. They nationalize companies or they finance other companies. So the kind of state capitalism that we see in Asia, in South Korea, in Singapore, in Japan, in China, that kind of state capitalism is going to become the new norm for the whole world. Liberalism will be replaced all over the world with state capitalism. The big state is here to stay. Now, what does all of this mean for cities like Busan? What we're going to see is, of course, the nation states will stay as they are, but across the network of nation states we're going to get a matrix of the city states. City states like Busan deal with each other. So Busan can deal with other port cities in the world, like Rotterdam in Holland, like Hamburg in Germany, like Singapore, like other ones as well. So you can deal with other port cities. So what you can do is create a coalition of port cities that deal with each other. And that will be very interesting, because the city-state is a concept that we had before in history. But I think the city-state is going to come back, but in new waves. And that is something you could elaborate on this conference much more. How are we going to do it as the city-state new style? Because I think you will have enormous possibilities. City-states can be creative, inventive, and how all of this might be, you can see in this final video. into the post-COVID world that is going to happen. And you, in city-state as Busan, with all the other people from other city-states who are attending now, you can create a coalition of innovative city-states, portal states, portal city-states, and you can connect and collaborate and create a new renaissance for everybody involved. Good luck with it. Thank you.